Of the LLM in Global Food Law, Sustainability Challenges and Innovations. Director of the University of Parma, Professor Paolo Martelli, will now take the floor for his institutional greetings.
Dear students, colleagues, and distinguished guests, I'm very delighted to welcome you to the opening ceremony of the Master Degree in Global Food Law, Sustainability, Challenges and Innovation, a course aimed at addressing one of the most complex challenges of our time, inviting us to reflect upon and act on the crucial issues related to food sustainability, law, and innovation. Huge changes are characterizing our time. Agriculture, food production, and consumption are no longer merely local issues, but have gained a global feature. The food system is now intertwined with multiple dimensions: economic, environmental, social, cultural, and geopolitical. In this framework, the role of technological innovation plays a pivotal role, and the legislation must strictly follow and run together with this. This degree program aims at shaping a new generation of professionals who are equipped to deeply read and manage the complexity of the global food sector. You, dear students, will have the opportunity to explore topics such as food security and food safety, sustainability, ethics, and justice, and how these interconnect with the regulation, leading markets, and production chain. The concept of sustainability is at the core of this educational path, and rightly so. Our food system impacts on the planet, contributing to climate change and to the depletion of natural resources. It is our duty not only to analyze this issue, but also to seek innovative solutions that can contribute to the more equitable and sustainable future. Your role will be fundamental in understanding regulatory strategies and policies that can support this transition. In the meantime, technological innovation and digitalization are transforming the food sector from production to the consumer. Artificial intelligence, blockchain, big data, and biotechnology are powerful tools that can improve the traceability, efficiency, and sustainability of the food supply chain. Your program will equip you with the skills to understand and use these technology ethically and responsibly, positioning you as leader of change. You must also remember the crucial role of institution and regulation. You will have the opportunity to analyze international regulation and regulatory mechanism, from European legislation to multilateral agreement, gaining the skill necessary to work with international organizations, NGOs, companies, and institutions. Food law is constantly and quickly evolving and requires professionals with a global vision and a solid legal background. Above all, I want to emphasize the importance of the social impact. Food production can directly affect people's quality of life, social justice, and the well-being of communities. Becoming expert in this field means being able to contribute to the world where food rights, health, and sustainability are guaranteed for all. Allow me to conclude with a heartfelt Thank you to everyone who has made this program possible, to our faculty and researchers, our institutional and industrial partners, and to everyone who share this vision with us. To you, dear students, I wish this course being a journey filled with the challenges, but also with great satisfaction, gratification. May you find inspiration in every lesson, curiosity in every question, and determination in every step toward the future. Be mindful of the responsibility and the power that your knowledge can bring to the world. Together, we can build a food system that is more fair, safe, and sustainable. You can play a significant role in this project. Thank you for your presence, and I wish you a wonderful experience. Thank you.
The Director General of the Territorial Offices and Laboratories of the Italian Ministry of Agriculture, Food Sovereignty and Forests, Dr. Oreste Gerini, will now take the floor for his institutional greetings.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. I thank you for the invitation, and I bring greetings from the head of the department of ICQRF, Mr. Felice Assenza, who was unable to attend the event due to non-derogable commitments. ICQRF looks with great interest to the establishment of the master's degree course called Global Food Law, Sustainability, Challenges and Innovation, dedicated entirely to the agro-food sector, the central point of our activity. Innovation, sustainability, and challenges will be the three pillars of the agro-food future for our country and for all the countries in the world, I think, all united to desire to create growth linked to environmental sustainability and improvement of people's living conditions. Global food laws mean addressing the problem from every point of view, and it's an aspect that has so far been missing in our student and university organization in particular. From now on, I am committed, but my position is also shared, available for any support that may be deemed useful. I would like to remind that ICQRF is the main Italian authority in the sector of control in agri-food and of technical means of agricultural production, with 32 offices and 6 laboratories situated in all the region of Italy. Our activity in 2023 is resulted in 54,000 anti-fraud controls, with 28,000 of operator checked, 11,500 products analyzed in our laboratories, and size is good for a value of 42 million euros. At this point, certain of the success of the course, I can only wish everyone a good work. Thank you very much.
The Director of the Department of Law, Politics and International Studies, Professor Giovanni Francesco Basini, will now take the floor for his institutional greetings.
Grazie al professor Castelli per la parola. Oggi è una giornata bellissima per noi del Dipartimento di Giurisprudenza, Studi, politici e internazionali, perché questa che è una tappa di un percorso, ma è anche un punto di arrivo a cui seguirà poi una nuova corsa in avanti, un punto d'arrivo di un complesso lavoro, percorso partito ormai 3-4 anni fa con la partecipazione alla competizione per vincere i finanziamenti come Dipartimento d'Eccellenza, e la vittoria è dovuta proprio all'ideazione di quello che oggi si sta avviando, cioè del corso di laurea internazionale in Global Food Law, ideazione per la quale ringrazio tutti i miei colleghi. In particolare mi sia consentito Lucia Scaffardi, che è stato il primo motore di tutto questo lavoro di anni, e quindi oggi è il coronamento, ma appunto anche soltanto il primo passo di un percorso che dovrà continuare ancora a lungo. Il primo anno di questo nuovo corso di laurea ha cominciato le lezioni poche settimane fa. Abbiamo un numero di studenti che per questo primo anno troviamo soddisfacente, contiamo di poter crescere negli anni a venire, anche perché il corso, mi sia consentito di dirlo, è molto ben pensato, molto ben strutturato, e in più tanto l'Ateneo di Parma quanto il territorio ha, come tutti sapete, una vocazione per quello che è il settore alimentare, per quanto poi noi riguarda il diritto dell'alimentazione e della sostenibilità. E quindi non faccio altro che dare il benvenuto a tutti voi, ringraziarvi per la presenza, dare il benvenuto e ringraziare i meravigliosi relatori di oggi, e buon lavoro a tutti. Grazie.
The scientific coordinator of the Food for Future project, Professor Lucia Scaffardi, will now take the floor for her institutional greetings.
Distinguished authorities. Distinguished authorities, esteemed academic colleagues, honored guests, dear students. Today we gather the launch of a program that was born out of an instance of inspiration, one of those summer moments when academic mind relaxed, just enough to imagine new possibilities and try to forget bureaucracy. You know, sometimes the best ideas come when you least expect them. In the summer of 2022, as I was enjoying a good dose of sunshine, the nurturing feeling of good food, and the refreshing breeze of Dolomites, a simple yet incessant thought came to mind. Why not creating within the perimeters of our Department of Excellence project a course that addresses today real changes in food law? Something new in Italy, the first LLM with a broad outlook, food law at 360 degrees with a global perspective. Because food nourishes us, inspires us, and brings us together. But underneath surface, every time we eat at the dinner table or buy groceries, we are part of a story in which food law is the key ingredient of the recipe. And here we are, after 2 years of sometimes crazy but always exciting work, with this new LLM in global food law, a course that is in line with today's affairs and the legal dimension of one of the most fundamental needs. While the initial ideas for such a project may come from one person, it's really take a dedicated team to bring it to life, to make it real, to make it vibrant and impactful. And for this, I like to say thank you to the steering committee. You can see the people that are part of the steering committee. And to the advisory board that is here with us today. 3 professors and Dr. Michela Petronio is really important person that you have the opportunity to meet later. And another one committee that is very, very important, that is the Monitor Committee. And here you can find a lot of colleagues, and not all from the Department of Law, but from other departments of the University of Parma, and some of them from other universities. So this course, like so many other academic endeavors, is very much a collaborative creation. Each of those esteemed colleagues I just presented, and many others, have contributed with their expertise, insight, and at times, much needed encouragement when I felt the task was daunting. I have to admit that there were moments during the planning stages when I wondered if we could pull it off. It was then when I turned to my colleague for support. For example, when I got lost in a mountain north of Dolomites of research, trying to find the best academic talent and subject to learn about. One of my friends, who is kind enough to be here today in the audience, I can see him, remind me an old saying about tackling big tasks with a laugh. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. I laughed a lot because it didn't make sense to me at that time. But after some work, I understood the depth and importance of this wise metaphor. But I also remember those moments when I felt overwhelmed by the amount of material we had to cover. A trusted colleague reassured me, one step at a time, you have got the team. We'll get there together, and that's what makes this course so special. It's not the result of a single vision, but of the collective input, enthusiasm, and relations of everyone involved. And now I can say that is true. When I saw the 7 new colleagues teaching with such aim, dynamism, and drive, it felt like a dream come true for me. And last but not least, the honor of seeing how this course has attracted, and I am sure will continue to attract, renowned visiting professors from all over the world. It is truly heartwarming and continues to inspire, because it is only by receiving such high degree of interest and curiosity that one can aim higher and higher. It is the regard of, I would like to thank you, the Professor van der Meulen, who was the first to believe in us and who has been teaching here for several weeks now, and whom I see sitting in the audience. So, to all the administrative staff, to my fellow faculty members, thank you, really thank you, for not only sharing your expertise, but for being there with a word of encouragement and a perspective that has been crucial to keep this idea moving forward. And to our students, what we hope to bring to you through this course is not only a new and informed academic knowledge, but also the same kind of collaborative spirit. We want this to be a learning journey, one where every question you ask, every insight you bring, help shape the experience for all of us. This program shows that can be achieved when ideas are supported by collective effort. Let's make it an example we will all remember and be proud of. We are an ancient university, ancient and famous university with a series of food-related scientific projects, such as the degree course in food science and technology, gastronomic science, the food system management, economics and management of sustainable food environment, engineering for food industry, etc. I hope that I didn't forgot anyone. More generally, the university food project, which binds together all the food-related courses. And now the University of Parma and our Department of Excellence will have the chance to be at the forefront of this enticing thematic, launching this first ever LLM in Italy, focused on the legal implication on the food sector. Today is a day of celebration, and I see here in the audience many stakeholders who have believed in this project since the beginning of this new adventure. From now on, I hope they will accept me calling them partners and friends, because their will to share with us how their business experiences, the needs in the field of food law impacted their history, can now be studied, be known, and be shared with our new students. These are the first three partners. These are the first three partners who have already signed partnership agreement with us, but rest assured that others are on their way to be part of this new and exciting adventure. This collaboration between the law department and the private organization who will be part of this project is hopefully the first step to what might become a continuous exchange of ideas between academia and the technological innovators of our daily lives. But why food, you might ask? And the answer is far from simple. Yes, food is a basic human need, as the rector said before, but as we said before, it's a much more below the surface. It is intertwined with international trade, environmental sustainability, innovation, human rights, public health, cultural identity. The way food is regulated, whether through laws, policies, or international agreements, has profound implications for social justice, economic development, and the global environment. As future leaders in this field, our students will play a vital role in shaping how to address these complex issues and ensure that the global food system remains fair, safe, and sustainable. To conclude, I would like to come back to our young students of the LLM, who are the main protagonists of the present and future, not only of the food law, but of humanity itself, more broadly speaking. You have the mission to understand and apply change to your life, striving to better the community you come from and the world around you. That's why we invited Professor Riccardo Valentini, one of the most competent professors in Italy and in the world, on the subject of climate change and its negative relationship with food, because we hope that this course will give you new ways of thinking about what is changing. This program is designed to challenge you, to push you thinking beyond national borders, and to understand how global dynamics influence law in every region, in Italy, in Europe, and in the entire world. We will explore everything from food security and agricultural trade to biotechnology, sustainability, and ethical dilemmas that arise when law intersect with access to food. But this program is more than academic exercise. The knowledge you gain here will empower you to become an agent of change, as you already said. Whether that means advocating for fair food laws, tackling food waste, contributing to international policy, discussion on food security, or speak about the consequence of climate change on the food supply chain. You will be entering a rapidly evolving field where the impact of your work will be felt across borders, industries, and communities. We encourage you to approach this course with curiosity, ambition, and a deep sense of responsibility for the challenges that lie ahead. In your classroom, you are not just discussing law. We are shaping the food for future. Remember, this is the name of our Department of Excellence. I thank you all to be here today and for being part of the beginning of a new adventure. And I wish you all success in this transformative experience. Thank you.
Okay, it's now time for the inaugural lecture of the LLM in Global Food Law, Sustainability Challenges and Innovation, which will be given by Professor Riccardo Valentini. While he's taking his seat, just a few information about his CV. Professor Valentini is full professor of forest ecology at the University of Tuscia, Italy. His expertise concerns the role of land use changes and forestry in the carbon cycle, biodiversity and bioenergy. He is also involved through the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and governmental bodies on policies about the global carbon cycle and the role of the land use changes and forestry. He is the coordinator of several EU projects aiming to understand and quantify the terrestrial carbon budget and greenhouse gases emission. He is the coordinator of the EU project Carbon Africa. He is doctor honoris causa, Faculté Universitaire des Sciences Agronomiques de Gembloux, Belgium, and most importantly, he is also a Nobel Prize for Peace as member of the IPCC board. Is the director of the Impact Division of the Euro-Mediterranean Center on Climate Change, a member of the Bio-Geoscience Committee of the European Research Council. So, Professor Valentini, thank you for having accepted to give this keynote speech today. The title of your presentation is Interactions Between Climate and the Agri-Food System, Global Challenges. The floor is yours. Thanks.
Thanks. Good morning, dear students, dear colleagues, and distinguished authorities. It's really a great pleasure to be here for this inaugural ceremony of the new classes for food policy. And I try today to give you an overview of where we are with a global perspective in terms of the agri-food systems and the challenges related to climate, but not only to climate, also societal changes. I hope the students, particularly during this journey, will look at the, let's say, more technical, scientific results in terms of policy and regulation. We desperately need to have experts that help us to shape the future also from the side of the jurisdiction and laws and regulation, because we can say that in this moment we still need an order of the problems that concern sustainability and the future of our planet. Then, I start with this picture that maybe is a little bit strange. Let's say there are two iconic images. On the left, this is the Mediterranean Sea, and it's a message of what we are now in the middle of global warming situation, where you can see the anomalous warming on the eastern Mediterranean waters that create a lot of the catastrophic extreme events, including the Emilia-Romagna floods, because of the excess of heat create convectional clouds and transport to the north of water bombs. Okay, we call also sometimes in the scientific literature Medicane, Mediterranean hurricanes. So we have used with hurricanes, cyclones in the Atlantic. These are Mediterranean, a little smaller than Milton and the others, but still very dangerous for our life. So this is where we are. We are in the middle of this, and the Mediterranean is also in the middle of these climate changes. On the right side, you see another kind of strange image is a wheat field in the middle of Manhattan, New York. And you can ask why there is a wheat field there in the city. Well, it's a sign that land is short. We need to find food. We need to produce the wealth for the future generations with food. And so that's also the urban areas are becoming important elements of such endeavor. I'd like to start from one of the major, challenges the human population. That is the basis of the current global ecology, the increase of human population that is rising very, very fast. Oh, sorry, this is the graph that is showing the incredible growth. We are now at about 7.5 billion, heading to 9 billion 2050. I was born in 1959, more or less here, and I can say very proudly to my grandchildren that I was the first generation in a human history where I've seen more than doubling the human population. Okay, there was not other time in the human history where we can see doubling the population. Indeed, if you look at when Jesus Christ was born, about 250 million were in the planet. That is maybe a country like, I don't know, Russian Federation is the population of that is having all the planet resources. So it was a big planet. So today we are in this very, very steep curve. But it's not only the amount of people that, let's say, is behind this graph, but also the quality of population growth. Today, we have more urban people, so more people living in urban areas than rural population. In 2010, this is a very important milestone. 2010, we were just equal. And from then, the rural population started to decline, and the urban population is now taking the lead. So in the future, we'll have 80% by 2050, actually, the next future, 80% of global population that will be just living in the cities. So the question is, who's going to grow the food, the plants, but also more in general, how will change our relation with nature, with the land, if everybody stays in big cities. And this creates, let's say, something that I defined many years ago, the Homo urbanus in terms of food in particular. It's different, completely different from the Homo sapiens of the countryside, where we're used to eat fresh foods or to have very social events where we basically were eating at home all the time for lunch and dinners. Today is completely dramatically changed. We eat processed food. We don't basically already packaged food. We are not eating at home anymore, basically, even at dinner. At lunch, for sure, we are in canteens, in a working place. So it's a big transformation, and we produce a lot of waste. So we produce also the problem of how we can also transport the food into the city, how we make, again, back the connection with the land. That's so a big challenge for the new Homo urbanus, and we have to face with that. Then we have also something that is behind the question, there is enough food for everybody? So this is a classic question. And the answer is more complex. For sure, yes, we have to think about, because we don't have enough probably food, but we have also paradoxes that are also impairing our ability to provide food to everybody. One paradox, for example, is the nutritional paradox, where we have 868 million people today that is undernourished in the world, and about 1.5 billion people that are overnutrition, so they are obese. And at the end of the story, both of categories, they die. They die with more or less the same amount of rate, 36 million undernourished and 29 obese, because of all the health issues related with diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and so on. So there is a paradox, because we have maybe too much food at some point for a category of people. Of course, not all the people in the world, but a category of people, there is, of course, too much food. Then we have the land use. The land use is another important point, because we have changed our diet from let's say, more balanced vegetarian and carnivorous diet into mostly diet based on animal proteins. And this is, for example, has changed a lot, for example, in Southeast Asia, dietary habits. And so we need more land, because we have to grow the feedstock to feed the animals. And so more land is needed to produce the animal proteins than the vegetable proteins. So that's a big point that we make the land shorter and shorter for us. Then we have also in these current days also this discussion on biofuels, producing so fuels from agricultural production, from biomass. And again, this is another big question for us, because at some point we have to decide whether to go by car or to eat, because the land is the same. So we have to produce biofuels or not. So it's a important. Again, everything I say is a regulatory problem. No? Everything I say has roots in what you guys are working on for helping to solve the situation. And then the third, even more important, we waste food for about 35%. We waste food 4 times. The food that could really feed 4 times the population, the 868 million population that is without food. So there is an ethical problem, a great ethical problem. We waste food when people don't have food. And there is an environmental problem, because this food that's been produced is wasted. So we have wasted the fertilizer, we have wasted water, we have wasted the energy. For what? For nothing. That's an important, terrible issue for our societies. It's not only food waste in our houses. There's also food losses in the food supply chain in the developing world. There are problems where the food doesn't arrive to big cities because there are no technologies for that. So it's a huge problem that, so the answer to there is enough food, probably not, but also we are complicating a lot the availability of food with these problems. So this reflects into basically in the fact that we historically have destroyed a lot of natural lands to produce agriculture. The green spots you see here, the dark green, are the current natural forests that still are the intact habitats we have. The light gray here are the forests that were here in the 8,000 years ago, and now are disappeared because of the agricultural expansions. So at the end, we have today deforestation rates, again, for producing food of 13 million hectares per year, considering that Italy has a forest area of 11 million of hectares. So we are disappearing every year more than the Italian forest from the planet, okay? So every year, the sites like the Italian forest disappear from our planet for deforestation. Then the land per capita has shrunk a lot, particularly in the last 60 years. You see the dramatic changes of the land per capita, and then we have less and less land available for the future generations of humans. At least we have not more than something like 27% of the available land for the new agriculture. It's a challenge, of course, for the agri-food system. Then climate change comes into play and exacerbate these problems. And this is just an animation of the observed the CO2 concentration, carbon dioxide concentration in the atmosphere. The northern hemisphere, where most of the population lives and more the industry and the economy is growing, is responsible for the CO2 concentration here. But you can see also here a blob of emissions and plumes due to the deforestation in the Congo River Basin. You can see very nicely, actually, from the space. So it's real. So it's not something that we have invented, like, deforestation as a generic term. It's real. CO2, carbon dioxide is emitted, and also you see in the Amazon Basin, we have the corresponding plume that is shifted by seasonality. So every year we measure CO2 concentration increasingly. We never decrease concentration, so everything is going up. And so there are no signs of inversion. And in particular, we observe climate changes now since a century, even more than a century. You can see an animation here showing the temperature. This is the green line is the safe below 1 degree heating, and you can see now we have exceeded already 1990 and so on, 2000, these thresholds. So we are now up to 1.5, even more degrees warming globally, okay? And already already we achieved in the Mediterranean, unfortunately, 1.5 degree heating. So we are already in this climate change scenario. You see also that the climate change occur everywhere in the world. Is together with the COVID pandemic, the most global problem. Every country in the world basically had this problem with different, of course, intensities and possibly different responses. Yeah, you can see from here again, and particularly you see the northern part, the high latitude are the ones that are experiencing already quite a global warming together with South America and a few other places. So the implications for this are important, but I want to stress just one thing that is important, because all the time comes that I've been asked to make interviews about climate change and asking me what I think about the negationism. You know, there are the people that think that climate change is not real or something, or humans are not responsible for that. Climate change is real. Okay, now, fortunately, people that claim that, they're very few because the data are so clear that, but there are still some that think that the climate change we are observing today are natural. There is no effect of humans, no anthropogenic effects. And I just want to mention this graph. It's a very important graph that the scientific community, IPCC, presented in one of their reports some time ago, where basically this graph tells you very quickly that there is no way to reproduce the observed change in temperature in the last century without the human anthropogenic factors, without carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. There is no way to reproduce the observed records of temperature without introducing the anthropogenic forcing, emissions of fossil fuels. The blue line is if we don't include CO2 in our simulation, okay? There is no observation of warming. That is not real. So this is the proof that there is a very, very important effect of humans in shaping our climate. Sorry for this, but I found it important to tell the story, because I don't like to go in the talk show and discuss by words, okay? Because we are scientists, we have models, we have data. We challenge other colleagues that have different ideas to publish their papers, publish their model simulation and show. But unfortunately, there is no model simulation today available to explain the warming that we experienced in the last century. Then climate agriculture systems are in the middle of this. I'll try to speed up a little bit now. We have the question of how the system interact with climate. We have an important role of the land in terms of regional climate regulation. There are some effects in which we cultivate the land and we use the land also on the local climate. There are climate impacts on the production, so there are extremes and impacts that impact our production. There are emissions of greenhouse gases that go into the atmosphere and produce climate change, so there is a circularity concept here. We produce emissions, then we have climate impacts that impact on food and so on. We have the possibility to remove carbon from the atmosphere with our crops or with our systems and forests. Could be used, some of the material can be used for energy substitution, some material can be also used for natural-based solutions like wood, like in this beautiful room is used for our life. So we can use the wood that is carbon dioxide absorbed by the plants to substitute material. So there are many, many complex interactions at all levels. The agricultural system is exactly in the middle. They can be impacted by the climate, can be a solution for the climate, can change the climate, so it can produce materials that are also important for our sustainability. So it's very complicated, but very interesting also and challenging. The impact of climate on production is very clear. These are the most important crop for food in the world. You can see that not all the crops are impacted. The wheat will be impacted more from climate change. A little bit less the soy and so on. This type of data are available today, are very common. And also we have more or less a global picture where we are, the most important impacts of climate. And the world is divided more or less into regions This is the red areas where we will have a decrease in crop yields from climate change. You can see most of the world, of course. And then we have some places in the northern latitude where there will be some stimulation of crop. This is true. Probably in Russian Federation and probably in Canada, you will have a warming that stimulates the crop production, okay? But this graph tells us also a very important geopolitical question that most of the people live here, okay? Most of the people live in the temperate and tropical regions. Very few people live in these northern areas. So it's a little bit a paradox because in an idealistic world where all the humanity collaborate, is prone to share commodities and so on, there will be not much a problem because some of the food can go south, and help the people there. But unfortunately, we live in a very complicated geopolitical situation where actually there's a lot of tension, a lot of competition, and I don't think that this situation will be solved by international agreements. So there will be, again, another element of discussion. Then, in reality also, this was a work that we recently done on using a climate scenario from our team to look at what is the self-sufficiency in the future. So, I mean, there are countries today that are self-sufficient, like the gray or light yellow, self-sufficient for production, so they can feed their own population, okay, broadly. And in the future, you can see that many of the countries become blue, so that means that they are not able to produce and satisfy the food demand. So again, there will be an imbalance of countries with great demand, but they're not able to satisfy this demand by climate impacts on their land. And again, another, let's say, preoccupying question is, yes, we are able to adapt, we are able to put technology and to basically respond to climate change. And this is true. We can respond to climate change and trying to reduce the losses of yield by technology. That means adaptation, so genetic varieties and irrigation and different things. So we can stabilize, let's say, in the temperate regions where basically we live here, these climate impacts, but even with technology it will be very difficult in tropical regions to respond to the climate change. So that's an important thing. So again, this north-south equilibrium should be fine anyway, because it's not easy to solve at the regional, local level, this impacts of climate change. Then, of course, the animal welfare is very, very much impacted from climate, and this also is very important relation with what we call zoonosis, so the human health also, because the things are very much related now, and particular attention has to be done on this problem as well of our animals. Then we come to the one of the most debated questions in the recent years, when it comes out that
un altro rapporto IPCC, Land and Climate, aveva posto proprio le emissioni di agricoltura dalla farm to fork, quindi dalla produzione fino al consumo, incluso il waste.
Yes. Okay. Sorry, there was a recording of my voice. And the problem that we are facing now that is quite recent, because the greenhouse gas emissions has been so far attributed to fossil fuels, okay? We use oil and gas. Food now is entering in this big arena as an important element of greenhouse gas emissions. 37% now, recent paper actually updated to 42% of the greenhouse gas emissions are coming from the food systems. So there is a big responsibility of the agri-food system in the global warming. And just to give you an idea, we are now in this moment, the agri-food system is equivalent more or less to the electricity sector, okay, that impact on greenhouse gas emissions. So it's a great influence. And this has to do with what we eat, of course, what we consume, and how the agri-food system is organized. And of course, this has created an interest in calculating the impacts of food products. There are already a lot of labels, like carbon footprints, water footprints, carbon for CO2 for greenhouse gas emissions, water also for water footprints. And this became very popular, and the consumers are indeed more informed, but not yet able to change, let's say, the system. So they are informed, but it's a slowly growing interest. But there is also a lack of regulations. A lot of, from this point of view, is lacking in terms of certification for sustainability of these products. And we recently made work on trying to recalculate the footprints of foods, and we published this paper on natural scientific data. It's a big database that contain more than 3,000 food items and their impact on the carbon footprint, and something like 1,000 on water footprint. And you can see here the, let's say, ranking of different type of food products with the numbers, like, for example, beef is at the top, the red meat, with 25.8 kilograms of CO2 equivalents per kilogram of meat, okay? And of course, at the bottom, you have vegetables, tubers, fruits, let's say, that are just 0.3, 0.4. So there is really a factor of 20 between these two food items in terms of impact of greenhouse gases emissions. And then we came out also with some question about what could be the ideal diet for a citizen to help to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And we started with the paper from the Heat Lancet report, the Lancet Commission for Health, that addressed some years ago for the first time the role of food, and they come out with this number that we should eat every day food in a way that we don't exceed 2.5, let's say 0.49 kilogram of CO2 equivalent of emissions. Okay, so we have a limit, and this will keep will be able us to maintain the global warming less than 2 degrees by the end of the century. Okay, so this is the general limit. So if we eat, all of us, all the citizens of the world, this amount, we can save the climate. Okay, that's some way. Let's put it this way. We made a similar calculation starting from this Heat Lancet report, and we came out with calculating what could be the Mediterranean diet in terms of emissions. And very remarkably and surprisingly, but not so much, our diet, if you follow the Mediterranean diet, you are exactly very similar or even lower than the Heat Lancet report. So if we eat like Mediterranean diet, we can really make an impact on the climate change. That was the conclusion. But then we wanted to ask ourselves, to European citizens, whether the Mediterranean regions of Europe, whether we eat really Mediterranean or not. And the final outcome of this work was that, in reality, this is the ideal per capita emissions, but what we found, looking through FAO statistics and import-export food and so on, that we impact as double. So we don't eat Mediterranean, basically, in Mediterranean countries, but we are just similar to all the other European northern countries, so we don't follow Mediterranean diets. I just want to tell you, because we have an important, let's say, message that we give all the time. You know, we have to eat Mediterranean, but we don't eat in reality. So there is a lot of things to do in terms of education, formation, and rules, regulations, food policies in the schools, everywhere, you know, to stimulate the Mediterranean diets. Then we make another experiment that I just to finish almost. I don't know how much time, but I have time still. Okay. Okay. This was a project that was coordinated by Barilla Center for Food Nutrition, now Barilla Foundation, about making experiments on people, on real people, and say, if we make education, formation, advocacy, how much the people can change their food habits when they eat. And we took, we got this European project funded together with the Wageningen University and the Sustainable Restaurant Association UK and Green Apes, a startup working with apps, let's say. Trying to then work in 2 different countries, in Italy and UK, and we selected the universities as a place, the canteen universities where students are eating, and see how they respond to this campaign of informations, and then we apply to companies where workers are eating in canteens, and we selected the Barilla company, of course, but also the Ducati Motors company. That's very more challenging than Barilla, I would say, because Barilla is already informed the people, workers in Barilla, and let's say more open to accept change in food, but in Ducati Motors was very complicated. You can imagine the young guys working the motorcycle, the mechanics, they are 2 meters tall, you know, big. They want to eat meat, you know, every day, double dishes and so on. So it was very complicated, but finally, with this campaign of information, so this is the Ducati Motors canteen, we were able to explain to the people that they could have lunch and dinners at, with a relatively low amount of impacts on climate. And I have to say that we have been very, very happy to have also chefs that were very excited to apply their knowledge as good cookers and use the ingredients that make the food very healthy and sustainable. That was the key. That was the key, because you cannot impose the people to eat maybe low-emission food, but it's very, you know, not tasting or ugly to see and so on. You need a chef that make creative dishes, very tasty, colorful, and this was the key of success. Indeed, we have been able then at the end of this experiment to show that we can reduce, okay, without going to the details, about 30% of greenhouse gas emissions by changing the food, but in a very good way, you know, with good dishes, nice, tasty, and people were very happy, and actually they bring back to their homes the recipes, because the recipes were from the chef were available on the web, and at home the families could use the same recipes of sustainable dishes, and so we had a very great impact on reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Then I close my talk with another element that still under strong regulatory question from the European Commission is the question of how much carbon we can take from the agriculture, how much we can sequester carbon dioxide. This is the other side of the story. Okay, you have an impact, we have emissions, but also there are some solutions. Forest, biomass, good agriculture can sequester carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and help us to achieve what is written in the Green Deal, that we have to reduce the emissions to a level by 2050-60 that we reach the carbon neutrality. What does it mean? That the net zero emission should be zero, sorry, when we have to reach the net zero emission. So this is a very complicated to understand because the emissions cannot be zero, okay? You cannot reduce the emission of greenhouse gases completely zero. It's absolutely impossible. You can reduce a lot emissions, but at some point you have a residual. But you can absorb the residuals of these emissions to be net zero, what we call carbon neutrality. This is possible. Actually, it's a law. This is a binding target of the European climate policy. But how we can sequester the carbon dioxide in excess, and this creates, so the new challenge for our European Common Agricultural Policy, actually. These are the scenarios that we have in this moment. You see, we achieved already 2020, it's 23%. We achieved more than the 20% target of emission reductions. We are going toward the 50% emission reductions in 2030. We have to reach 90% of emission reduction by 2050. It's a lot, but it's feasible. Then what remains, the 10% that remain, we have to absorb by the land, okay? By the land or by engineering technologies like direct capture of carbon dioxide from atmosphere, but it's very expensive, not yet very much feasible. So the only feasible thing we have today actually is biology, plants, land. That's the main point. And so we have this residual of 65, 85 million of tons CO2 that we have to absorb by the agricultural systems. And this is, of course, how we can do it. We can use the natural system. Oh, okay. This is a... I hope, yeah. And this is what is a very fascinating view from the Earth satellites of the photosynthesis of the land. And so you see the greening that moves, every year. We have these nice patterns. You have the border temperate regions that produce photosynthesis in the summer. During winter, of course, the plants are dormant. And the tropics, you have all the greening throughout all the year. This photosynthesis is the carbon capture. So it's the carbon dioxide capture. So we don't need special technology. It's really biology. We can do naturally. And this is so the challenge. It's important because if we look at the global carbon cycle, we have, let's say that on the left you see the emissions. 88% of the emissions are fossil fuel emissions. 12% are coming from tropical deforestation. These are the input of CO2 to the atmosphere. But in the atmosphere remain only almost 50% of the total emissions, 46%. Why? Because we have these two systems, land, forest, biomass, and oceans, that take up about 50% of what we introduce in the atmosphere. So we have natural systems that are already doing a great job. Without them, we will be in a bigger problem, a double of problem. Now we have already a system that is acquiring carbon dioxide. The oceans, of course, also are important, but we cannot manage the oceans. We cannot manage we can manage the forest, we can manage the land, we can manage the agriculture, and this is the challenge. How we can increase the amount of carbon that we can take out from the atmosphere. And this comes the final point, that is the new regulatory law that the European Parliament has approved in April Council has approved in April 2004, that is the carbon farming. Okay? Carbon farming means that we are able to use the agricultural systems and forests also, of course, to absorb carbon in a regulatory mechanism. And that's the main point, how we regulate now this. This is the proposal that's been approved by the Council. There are 2 years from now to implement in a specific directive this possibility. And of course, there are many things that can be done in the land, like organic farming, reforestation, management of pastures, bioenergy, and so on and so forth. There are many practices that we can use for storing carbon in the land through biomass and soil. And of course, now we have to address the principles that has been illustrated in this regulatory proposal. And so there is a lot of things to go in deep now on how we quantify this. Of course, it's very technical, but these other questions are more political issues, additionality. Or basically, you have to show that it's not business usual. A farmer cannot claim carbon for what he's doing regularly. It has to be something in addition. No? You have to demonstrate that it is something additional. As well, the sustainability. You can make carbon, but without hampering other activities, okay? Biodiversity, social questions, water consumption. So, okay, you cannot grow just carbon, forgetting the rest of the interactions with the society. So there are many, many really issues here that Europe is facing, and of course, certification schemes. We need to certify everything, because these things becomes important. The farmers will be paid for producing carbon. So there should be a regulatory mechanism. Already the Italian government is doing that. With the CREA, they are trying to regulate this registry of carbon certificates, but still is ongoing. We have to not to lose this opportunity in Europe, of course. And finally, why this carbon is becoming important? Important economically, because the farmers can sell the carbon absorbed in their land in addition to the service they produce, like food. So it's an ecosystem service, an externality that can be sold in the society as a service. And so the farmers can obtain money from this. Already there is a carbon market, voluntary market, but this will become an official market, let's say, in 2 years from now. This voluntary market you probably have seen when you go, for example, to a music concert. No? This concert is carbon neutral, or when you take a flight, you see the ticket, this is compensated, because there are companies that are compensating and trading the carbon offset with forests, with agricultural soils, and so on. But it's voluntary, okay? It's not regulated, so it's based on reputation, mostly. This will become regulated in the future. The market that is behind is growing fast. It's going fast. These are the price per tons of CO2 that is absorbed and is growing up. There are some estimates even to reach $300 per tons of CO2 when we become close to 2050. 2050 is the net zero target, and so when you go closer to the regulatory targets, of course, the price becomes higher. So, if you want to invest, that's a good stimulation to invest in agricultural carbon credits. Yes, again, is another slide showing the total. Today, let's say the value of this carbon in globally, of course, is not trivial. It's $1,600 billion. That's a remarkable achievement. And again, we need regulations. We have a way to implement this in the society. We have to avoid fake carbon. That's another thing that is happening. So there is a lot of things that your students here can do to help us to reshape again the future of this world, starting from the climate change crisis, from the food crisis. And I think I'm really confident that this is not only a scientific, technological question, but it's also a question of the rules that we produce as a community of humans to solve this problem. And so you have a great role in this future. Thank you so much.
Okay, it's now time, thanks to Professor Valentini, it's now time for the inspiring speeches by the members of the advisory board of the Food for Future project. While they come to the desk, I take their seats. I will briefly introduce them. Professor Hayel Gross is a member of the faculty in Tel Aviv University, Faculty of Law, where he teaches international law and constitutional law. He regularly teaches as visiting professor at SOAS, London. He holds an LLB from Tel Aviv University and SJD from Harvard Law School. 1998, he was awarded the diploma in human rights from the Academy of European Law, European University Institute, Florence. Professor Sumantra Ray Shumone is a licensed medical doctor as well as a registered nutritionist, public health, with special interest in nutrition education in the health system and cardiovascular disease prevention. Since 2008, he has been founding chair and executive director of the Global Center for Nutrition and Health at the University of Cambridge. In 2018, he became the co-founder and chair of the BMG Nutrition, Prevention and Health. Professor Luigi Petrillo As a full professor of public comparative law at the Unitelma Sapienza University, he is a director of the UNESCO Chair on Intangible Cultural Heritage and Comparative Law, director of the School of Cultures, Politics and Democracies at the Department of Law and Digital Society. Since 2010, he has been professor of lobbying theory and techniques, master degree program in political science at Luis Guido Carli, Rome. And finally, Dr. Michela Petronio started a professional career in Italy, working in the meat and dairy industries as production and quality assurance manager. In 1992, she joined the Barilla Group, where she held several roles, both in the product development and research. She has been responsible for the global long and medium-term research projects related to the development of innovation and new technologies for several product applications for all the Barilla Group brands. In 2017, she contributed to fund Blue 1877, Barilla's corporate venture arm, and in 2019, the Barilla Startup Accelerator Program, Good Food Makers, in order to collaborate with agri-food tech startups. Thank you.
Invitato a Parma e per questo programma. Mi dispiace che non parlo italiano buono, allora inglese I just want to say a few words. Food is both something we enjoy and something we need. I think it brings unique challenges because unlike other social goods, it is physically needed to survive, but also is a source of pleasure, creativity, culture. So I think it brings, because of this unique combination, challenges different than any other topics in law and than any other human right. I came to the topic from being a human rights lawyer, but also from being fascinated with food and with the people who make it. Way before I wrote on food law, I was fascinated by issues like how the change of law about the composition of grapes in Chianti made it a better wine. Just talking with winemakers, said, actually they changed the law about what can be, so we got rid of some of the wine which was not so good because all sorts of grapes which were not as good were allowed in. Well, I got fascinated from a case, a real case, where whether a restaurant critic of food in Israel could be sued for libel by a restaurant because of his review of the restaurant. If you're interested, he won. The court held for freedom of speech. But there were questions whether what he described about the food in the restaurant, how do we assess it legally? Or what does the law say about how animals should be treated in farms? So food law is there affecting what we eat, drink, what should the label say, how much it should cost, where the food can be sold, when can it be sold. It is an area of law that touches upon our daily life in so many ways, but I think that more than most people notice, but often in transparent ways that people don't really notice. They don't usually, when people wake up and have their breakfast, they don't really think about the regulation, about the food, the ingredients, the label. Could it be imported, exported? But of course, the law affects what's on our plate or what is not on our plate in many ways. But while I was interested for many years, just because of my interest in food and interest in law, my breakthrough research into the topic was in the area of the right to food, because for me, the injustice that some people don't have access to enough food or don't have access to adequate food, whether it is economic access or physical access, was really just a form of injustice that made me very upset. So I wrote about those issues, which remain my focus. And today, they asked me before, when they taped a little interview, what do you think is needed more for good global food policy? And I thought about it, and thank you for asking me, because it actually made me think that today, two major issues that affect people not having access to food are economic situations. They cannot buy enough food, so that would be economic accessibility, and physical situations where they do not have physical access to food, and that would be mostly driven by armed conflict. So I think that good welfare economy and peace are maybe the two things we mostly need in order to have good global food policy, including good climate policy, which was mentioned before. But while mostly I worked on the right to food, when a colleague and I edited a book on food law, which came out in Israel, we issued a call for papers, and we thought it's quite a new topic. We will not get so many suggestions, but we got double the number of suggestions from the space we had in the book, and were overwhelmed by the responses and by the topics that I didn't even think about. For example, intellectual property in dishes, in recipes, animal rights, of course, environmental effects, or another one, hunger strikes in prisons, a whole issue that comes up in different countries, especially with political prisoners, and what will be the effect? Can you impose on them forced feeding, regulation of school lunches in different countries, geographical indications, of course. Law regulates about organic food, what are the requirements in order to be written on the label that it is organic, and of course wine law, which I mentioned, and even more. So we can see how the topic is diverse and how it can be an opening door to understand topics that I think everybody in the world cares about food, and most people love it at some level, but they are not, as I said, so much aware how much the law affects so much the food that they eat or that they don't eat. And I think that such a program allows us to shed more light on those questions, understand better, and change better, and make us maybe better eaters. So, in bocca del lupo per gli studenti. Grazie.
Good morning, everybody, and thanks to the University of Parma for inviting me. Thanks to Lucia for organizing this master degree, and to other scholars from the University of Parma. My suggestion to our students is things food not as tangible things, but as an example of intangible cultural heritage. What is intangible cultural heritage? We can say that ICH represents tradition, practice, rituals that are transmitted by generation to generation and that create a sense of identity between different communities. So ICH represents what we receive from the past and what we bring with us to the future. And at the same time, ICH represents what connects us to the community where we are from. Why is it important to think food as intangible cultural heritage? And why is it possible to consider food intangible cultural heritage? Try to think about what we chose to eat, when we eat, and in which way we eat. If you think to this, you realize that eating is a cultural action. What we chose to eat. Try to organize an experiment with your friends. Invite them for a dinner and prepare them something fried. And then you can propose this to your friend and asking, what do you think about this? Do you like? Probably your friend will answer, yes, very good. What is? And then after this request, you can try to explain that the food that you decided to fry, for example, is ant giant ant. Look the reaction. Also now, ants, no. And check the reaction of your friend. First of all, they will immediately stop to eat. And secondly, they will change their opinion about the taste of the food fry. Why? Not for the food itself, but because, according to our tradition, this kind of food is totally strange. Try to do the same experiment in another country. The reaction will be totally different. But not only what we chose to eat is an expression of our culture. Also, when we eat. In Spain, it's normal to have lunch at 3 o'clock. In Great Britain, it's normal to have dinner at 5:30, 6 o'clock. If you as Italians, a citizen of Parma, see in a restaurant people at 5:30, what do you think? Can you eat at 5:30 in the afternoon? Afternoon, not night. But also, if you think in which way we eat, you can realize that eating is a cultural action. Stay at table is not very common. How many hours we spend at table? Not only for eating, but how many hours? According to different culture, different from us, from our culture, it's not normal to stay more than 10 minutes for eating. But also, why we don't use our hand for eating? Why? Why we use cutlery, forks, and so? For cultural reasons. And the last point, which are the consequences of this fact? Of the fact that food is a cultural action and that food is an expression of intangible cultural heritage. Which are the consequences for you, for students that are studying law? There are a lot of different consequences. Because legislators, regulators, lawyers cannot ignore this fact. Just 2 examples. Try to imagine that you graduate and you work for the parliament or for the government, and you need to regulate the heating in public refectory. You cannot ignore the religious issues, for example. You have to consider this aspect. Another example. If we think to regulations that ban some products, we have to consider the cultural consequence of this kind of regulations, especially for minorities. For example, several years ago, European Union decided to ban seal meat that was coming from Canada, from north of Canada. But this kind of meat is produced by a very small minority in Canada, the Inuit population. And this represents the most important economical resource for this population. So, if the legislator decided to ban this kind of food, has to consider also the cultural consequence on the community involved in this kind of food. We want to cancel the cultural identity of these people. We have to think about this. But there are other examples. For example, try to ban foie gras for French people. We can do this, probably because in this way they can start to eat in a better way. But you have to consider the cultural consequence if you are legislators. So this is my just suggestion to our students. And my final consideration is that students that started to study this master degree are right. Because I'm sure that you will receive incredible education for answering the future issues and this is the most important thing, giving us the right answer. Thank you very much.
Okay, good morning. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay, good morning, everyone, and thank you to University of Parma to have invited me today, and especially to Professor Lucia Scaffardi for really giving this opportunity to also have an impact on this subject. So I'm here today and I feel the responsibility to represent the food industry, which is facing the significant challenges that Professor Valentini today was explaining. And what I want to remark here today is that we are all in this together, as a citizen, as students, as institution, as professional, that collectively require to make an effort and put new ideas and innovation on the table. Today, I just want to share 5 minutes of my experience as a professional who has devoted their career to address those challenges very seriously with a real passion for food and as a lifelong learner. The objective of my job has always been to envision the future of food, bringing new ideas and technologies to the industry. This could involve a new formulation, a new products, a new piece of equipment, a new packaging, new agricultural practices, but even new business models. And however, despite my love for studying and my curiosity, I still don't have a crystal ball. So how can we approach innovation in the food sector? How we face the complex paradoxes that we heard today? Food access and versus food excess. Food waste, the use of land for fuel, for feed, or for food. I want just to share my main three approaches that I have really experienced along this very long journey in innovation, which is, by the way, not finished yet. So first of all, study the problems. Really focus on the problems, not on the solutions. Become an expert of the problems you want to solve, and don't be attached to your own ideas. If you don't fully understand the problem, collaborate with those who do. Second, explore the boundaries. Look for solutions at the intersection of various disciplines. Work with people who have diverse backgrounds. Try to connect the dots. And third, most important, step out of your comfort zone. Draw inspiration from how others operate in different fields. If we actually want to have better food, healthier products, safer for us and for our planet, we must change something, and we must innovate, all together with a sense of urgency. This doesn't necessarily mean that we have to change the way we eat. It's quite the opposite. You might remember the narrative in the 80s, thinking about the future of food, astronauts eating pills. Today, we see movies depicting astronauts growing potatoes on Mars. So where can we find the solution that we need? I've personally witnessed in more progress in the last 10 years than in the previous 20 years combined. I told you that the most innovative solutions oftentimes arise at the intersection of different disciplines. For instance, when health science met food science, we discovered the concept of food as medicine. And also, we envisioned the idea of the holy grail of nutrition, personalized food. When data science was applied to agronomy, we developed the first decision supporting system, those systems that today are helping and assisting farmers with crop management. Today, AI has developed discovery platforms to identify in plants novel compounds that have properties similar to pharmaceutical molecules. So we don't need actually to look very far to envision the future of food. The concept of foresight here is very, very powerful, which means identifying those small pieces of future that are already present here among us and learning from them. I had the chance to visit the Silicon Valley in 2014, and I was astonished by the innovative food solution emerging from that community, aiming at saving our planet. I saw the first alternative proteins, the infamous Impossible Burgers, the first application of vertical farming, food delivery, robotics, but also the first concepts of regenerative agriculture. Also sensors to detect allergies at the restaurant. Actually, I saw those small pieces of future over there. And my key takeaways is that IT technologies, new capitals, and a new community were unlocking a new level of discoveries also in the food space, aiming at solving some of the critical issues in very new ways. That was the time when I started stepping more frequently outside the company to learn more about those ideas, to engage with those innovators, and eventually to understand how I myself could participate in this ecosystem. An ecosystem where startups, corporates, universities, investors are joining forces, enabling new discoveries in many disciplines, including health, nutrition, logistics, agriculture, food safety, and many, many more, all sharing our common goal. I'm describing a whole ecosystem accelerated by networks, collaborations, where different cultures, individuals, and technologies will play a crucial role. But to navigate this new way of working, we need a new framework of engagement that considers and deeply understands these dynamics if we wish to leverage all the opportunities available this century. And here you, the students of this new LLM global food law, come into play. Every actor in these complex ecosystems has tremendous opportunities and responsibility, but the innovators, the scientists, the corporate leaders, the institutions, the farmers, and the legal professional, indeed all of us as citizens, should view the regulatory framework as an opportunity for innovation. Innovation sparks where there are limits, borders, and rules. Regulatory frameworks, while sometimes perceived as like barriers, can actually motivate to think outside of the box and pursue more radical innovation. We should all share this responsibility of leaving a better world for the next generations. And so change is essential if we want to progress. We must educate our children about the relationship with food while explaining them the connection between food and the planet. And we need to improve the product, the supply chain. Perhaps we should grow products where there is not food yet. But at the same time, we need also to preserve the diversity of our food cultures and the legacies. We face so many issues alongside an emerging wave of science. And we need rules to be sure that we can make the right choices. So I'm concluding saying that I'm not the expert here at all, but I believe that your roles will be crucial and fundamental for those developments. Your journey begins at a time when the intersection of law, sustainability, and innovation in the food sector is more crucial than ever. As future leaders, you will gain the skills to navigate this complex landscape and will drive innovation in the agri-food sector, bringing your own fresh perspective and your personal contribution. So I really wish you a fantastic journey. Enjoy the journey. Thank you.
Buongiorno, grazie. Very good afternoon to everyone, and it's a huge pleasure and privilege to be here as part of the advisory board and also marking more than a decade of personal collaboration with the University of Parma. So greetings from the United Kingdom, but also from all of the 78 countries that the Global Institute for Food, Nutrition and Health represents. So I'm going to utilize a brief presentation, but I'm also acutely aware that after an entire morning talking about food, I'm the last person standing between you and your lunch break. So without further ado, what I'm going to try and do is really give you an example of the ecosystem that we're operating in, particularly in global public health nutrition, where there's a necessity to use interdisciplinary innovation, particularly as we head towards the 2030 goals. And I'm going to use a short case study of something known as the Mobile Teaching Kitchen International Initiative. Just a few declarations of interest. So I essentially am speaking here as the Executive Director of the NEDPRO Global Institute for Food, Nutrition and Health, but I also have a number of other university, publishing and wider cross-appointments. But one thing I can say is that across all of these, there is a common denominator of the need for continuous innovation and interdisciplinary improvement in the field of global public health nutrition. So the NEDPRO Global Institute for Food, Nutrition and Health has about 16 years of history, was co-founded by the University of Cambridge, works with many different actors and has over 1,000 members across 78 countries and counting. And really what we do at the heart of our knowledge ecosystem is to bring together creative solutions where science can work for society. So we're responsible for a number of subsidiaries, including our flagship journal, BMJ Nutrition, an academy, an intramural program within a leading nutrition-centric university, which actually bridges molecules to mankind, and a number of other initiatives that, again, bring people together. But central to our goal is really to tackle the complex burden or double burden of malnutrition. So we heard about that earlier, over and undernutrition and micronutrient deficiencies overlaid upon that, but to do that by actually bringing knowledge-based solutions to policymakers, which is where legal frameworks are incredibly important, to professionals and also to members of the public. So in doing all of this, one of the things that we are mindful of is that the interface between food, nutrition and the SDGs goes far beyond SDG 2, which is obviously the one that we always think of first. And the United Nations Decade of Action on Nutrition, which is due to conclude next year, has actually mapped all of the SDGs in terms of both the global challenges that we need to face, but also the food and nutrition solutions that can get us there. So going back a few years to 2017, at the University of Cambridge, across a very interdisciplinary group that involved practically every single faculty of the university, as well as other associated institutes, including ours, we were able to pull together the first Global Challenges Research Fund programme in the UK, which worked in close partnership with the Indian government. So this programme brought together a very polymathic approach, I would say, where thinking began with agrarian trajectories, climate resilience, decisions on land use, and particularly looking at 6 different agro-ecological zones within the Indian subcontinent, but also as a mirror of different microclimatic and ecological movements in other parts of the world, and finally ending with a work program which brought together solutions in the form of initiatives that would go all the way from farm to fork and in fact impact not only human health but also socio-economic status alongside that. And one of those examples is the Mobile Teaching Kitchen initiative, which works closely with another initiative known as the Innovation Farm. So in this Mobile Teaching Kitchen initiative, I'm going to take you a further step back in history. So 81 years ago, if we consider what happened, particularly in the Indian subcontinent, and going back to the then state of Bengal. So the famine of Bengal, you may know, is one of the most abhorrent famines in recent memory and history. And there were many different elements that led to that. There were structural issues, crop failure, the whole world was at war, but of course there was colonial subjugation, and there were also artificial black markets created, hoarding, and the control of supply, again in the face of unprecedented demand. All of this led to, in fact, the death of more than 1.2 million individuals as a result of the direct consequences of starvation. But 80 years later, what has happened in that particular scenario and in similar scenarios in other parts of the world? So we actually see this complex burden of malnutrition, which is actually the result of many different forms of programming. So there's heredity, environment, diet, lifestyle, socioeconomic, and also political circumstances. So those individuals who had actually come into a position of socioeconomic vulnerability and also food insecurity today remain intergenerationally food insecure and economically insecure. But of course, the oppressive forces have changed, but societal structures have not. So what if we could innovate across this whole ladder from food production through food environment to food choices and ultimately impact on human health, looking at using nutrition knowledge but also addressing wider determinants and in fact changing the status of those victims in society to champions. And that is the story of the Mobile Teaching Kitchen initiative that started 7 years ago. And here's a very short video by my PhD student at Cambridge University who is just submitting her thesis as we speak. If you could just click the previous one. If you just click on that.
Malnutrition in all its forms remains a major cause for concern worldwide, creating an intertwining and overlapping burden on individual, public and economic health. Additionally, in the wake of COVID-19, deep fractures in food systems have been exposed. Here arises a need for a multifaceted solution to create long-lasting systemic change. The Mobile Teaching Kitchen initiative was conceptualised with this in mind. As a mobile teaching unit, the initiative recruits members of marginalised communities and travels to festivals, institutions, office areas and other public gathering spaces to reach out to people through highly nutritious yet affordable food whilst providing nutrition education. Apart from functioning as an affordable pop-up or food truck service, the Mobile Teaching Kitchen provides knowledge about dietary practices, access to lower-cost healthy diets, and associated information on adopting healthier nutritional patterns, thereby improving food and nutrition security. The initiative trains participating members from the local communities in entrepreneurship, nutrition and culinary education, and empowers them by helping them run the MTK food service as a micro-enterprise. With further scalability of the model within India, Mexico, the UK, the US and further worldwide, we hope to achieve significant and sustained impacts on the number of vulnerable groups positively impacted by the initiative and strengthen community resilience against malnutrition.
So really this is an example of a model that initially started in one geographical area, in one socioeconomic and even historical context, as I explained, but that was then lateralized across several different regions of the same subcontinent, but also adapted to Mexico, to two of the most powerful cities in the United States, where there are deep pockets of food insecurity, and also recently very successfully in the United Kingdom. So all of this requires the navigation of legislative frameworks, which in fact means that the same model with the same principles can be implemented across borders, but with cognizance of how different adaptations and modulations are needed. So really, in summary, I could go on talking about this all day, but some of the things that we have learned through this is that actually this goes far beyond food and nutrition. This actually speaks to human rights. It actually speaks to the food supply and production piece. It also speaks to cultural heritage. So in many ways, this summarizes the way we as human beings interact with food and nutrition, because we cannot consider it in isolation to the rest of life. And in fact, by empowering some of the most vulnerable people in society to become food growers and entrepreneurs, who then have the knowledge to prepare and sell sustainable, healthy, fresh, tasty meals at a very low cost and educate members of the public in the process, is that process of changing those who were structurally in the position of victims in society to the role of champions. And that cannot be done without cognizance of policy and, wherever necessary, legislation. So this actually meets 7 of the SDGs as per evaluation, and this model has had a lot of recognition. And I just want to acknowledge that in fact that young lady in the bottom corner is my daughter, and this was her idea 7 years ago when she was just 8 years old. She's now a UN ambassador who advocates for this model in various parts of the world. But that is another important point that I want to make, and that is to listen to the next generation and tomorrow's innovators and leaders. So all of you on this program are representatives of the next generation, but also listen further, inspire those who are younger, and also gear yourselves and your peers for future roles that haven't even been invented yet as we continue to evolve. And just as I conclude, we are bringing all of this and many other case examples together in a summit at the end of this year, and I would encourage everyone who is interested to partake online as we try and see how we have developed some solutions, but also have a gap map to address in this global quest of addressing food and nutrition security, and for sure that will highlight some of the legislative challenges, but also inspire innovation going forward. So thank you very much.
Okay, so thank you again for your inspiring speeches. I guess we can end here. Thank you all for your participation and have a good lunch.